This is Mary Lewis at A Tiny Homestead, the podcast comprised entirely of conversations with homesteaders, cottage food producers, and crafters. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a comment. Thank you. Today I'm talking with my friend Tracy at O'Connor Family Acres. Good morning, Tracy. How are you?
Good morning, Mary. I'm doing well. Thanks. Thank you.
How did you guys fare with all this crappy weather yesterday?
Yeah, I stayed in. We were supposed to go somewhere, and I was like, nope, I'm going to stay in the house. Paul went to work, though, so he had to venture out, but he did well. He just took it slow, as we do in Minnesota.
Yeah, no doubt. So this is yet another hyper-local episode. Tracy lives like maybe 5 miles from me, maybe, in Lesour. So, I have to tell you, we're doing homesteadish stuff today.
Ooh, what are you doing?
Well, I started that black garlic thing, that fermenting thing, and that's been going for 3 days. So my kitchen has smelled like garlic for 3 days. And it's got to go at least another couple before I can even open it to check it. And Kyle and Cameron are downstairs basically heating up all the tomatoes that we froze to get ready to can them into sauce. So my house smells like an Italian restaurant right now.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love canning tomatoes. Was new for me. Last year was the first year I did it, and absolutely love the smell. And I'm excited to hear how your black garlic turns out, because that sounds super interesting. I was listening to your episode where you talked to the guy about black garlic, and I was very intrigued. So yeah.
Yeah, I will have to give you some so you can try it.
Awesome. I would love that.
Yeah, I think there's 15 heads of garlic in that machine right now. So I will, if it works, I'll have some to share.
Nice. I will reciprocate with, something.
Goat milk in the spring would be awesome.
Absolutely. That's a hopefully a for sure. We have a new buck this year, and he's pretty young, so hopefully he did what he needed to do, so we have babies in the spring.
And that would be wonderful. And on that note, tell me about yourself and what you guys do at O'Connor Family Acres.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are, a small homestead. We have about almost 6 acres. And we moved here to the homestead. This is going on 4 years now. We started with ducks, and we actually started with ducks in the city-ish. I say city-ish. We were in Medina at the time on an acre. And we started with maybe 6 ducks. And it was during COVID, of course, because, we didn't have anything to do. And we had been talking about when we buy our forever home, getting, some animals and really kind of not completely being independent, but controlling at least some of our food and how it's being, handled, processed, what goes into it, all the things. And so we started with ducks, and then when we moved to where we are now, O'Connor Family Acres, those ducks multiplied greatly, and we also got goats. And this year we added pigs. So we're not really at a point where we're, consistently selling. We'll sell something here or there. But we're almost to the point, I would say this next year, if our buck did what he was supposed to do, we'll be at kind of a tipping point where we can maybe start selling some stuff. And the idea is to, provide for us, provide for our family, and, maybe offset some of the feed costs and, the money that we're putting into it by selling some of the abundance, if you will. So.
Awesome. I'm glad that that's the case, because I don't, it's fine if you just have a homestead or a farm or whatever, and you're just doing it to provide for yourself. But that never quite works that way, because some years you will have an overabundance and you're like, what do I do with all of this?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, in the spring, because we do have so many ducks now, I'm literally trying to give eggs to people. I'm like, oh, it is so nice to see you. Thank you for visiting. Would you like a dozen eggs?
Yeah, we used to do that with the chicken eggs, because we just had so many we couldn't use them before they would go bad.
Yeah, exactly. Duck eggs and zucchini. Zucchini is the other one I always have an abundance of from the garden. We do have a garden too, but yeah, zucchini, I'm always like, oh, would you like some zucchini?
It was actually amazing to me this past summer when Kyle was selling at the farmers market in Lesour that people bought zucchini. I was like, "Are you serious? You don't have neighbors who are just putting it in your car or in your porch?"
It's so well, and not everybody does, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the beauty of it. And you guys have amazing vegetables. So I always love coming and seeing the garden and now the greenhouse and all the things, and of course seeing you guys too. But
Yeah, it's just the stuff. It's not
yeah.
us.
Kind of like when you have kids, right? And they're like, I come to see the kid. Well, also you too. But then when
Mhm.
you have a homestead, it's like, I come to see all the animals in the garden. Oh, and you too.
Yep, exactly. Um, so our garden this year, did not do real well. We had some
Yeah.
zucchini for a while and we had tomatoes after the third planting. And I'm very excited about the fact that we actually did get some tomatoes to make sauce out of, and we're doing that today. But keep your fingers crossed that next summer's better because man, this was a very depressing year for the garden.
Yeah, it was a really rough spring. And I think our saving grace was that we had the raised beds,
Hmm.
which, can be a positive and a negative. It was nice that it wasn't quite as, I mean, we still had some stuff that struggled for sure, as we do every year. And part of that is just we're still learning
Hmm.
too. I've always had at least containers. When I lived in the city, I had a little salsa garden with containers of tomatoes and peppers, and then when we moved to Medina, we added some raised beds, and now we're here. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, about 12 raised beds,
Hmm.
plus some space. I plant pumpkins on the side. There's some asparagus, rhubarb, some of the things that you definitely put directly in the ground. But so long story longer, that was kind of our saving grace this year. It does limit you, I think, a little bit, on the quantity because you leave, space, and there's only so much room. But for controlling drainage and things like that, it is definitely helpful. Yeah, my heart broke for you guys this spring for sure.
Yeah, ours too. It was very
Yeah,
sad. Like we shed some tears over that 4 or 5 weeks of rain.
yeah,
Um, so I have a question about your asparagus, but I also want to ask you another one after that that has nothing to do with asparagus.
yeah.
Was there asparagus there when you moved in, or did you guys put in crowns?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So this was actually kind of funny. So Paul tilled the garden. How did this go? He tilled the garden, said he had to buy a torch so he could burn the garden, tilled it again, and I planted asparagus, and it's so funny because where I planted it is kind of course on the edge of the garden because I know asparagus spreads like wildfire.
Oh yeah.
And and just to the left of that was asparagus coming up that spring. I'm like, first of all, how did that survive Armageddon or Garden Armageddon? And then also, yay, I have extra asparagus. So that was kind of cool.
And so that asparagus that was there, were you able to harvest some right
I
away?
think not the first year, and I don't know if that's because we, went crazy on the garden or if it was because it was newer, like maybe the people before us just put it in.
Yeah.
But this last year was the first year we were able to really get some asparagus. So it was the third year.
Yeah, I keep hearing that it takes 3 years for it to get established, and I
Yeah.
have the same experience. This is the first spring that we've been here that we've gotten more than like, 8 stems. So,
Nice. Nice. It is though. My my grandma's place, which is now my aunt's place, has an asparagus patch that's been there probably 50 years. I mean, I remember getting asparagus as a kid. And my aunt still gives the family asparagus every spring. So, I mean, once it's established, kind of like rhubarb, I know you had a really awesome rhubarb plant. It stays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually haven't gotten a whole lot of rhubarb from the stuff that we put in when we put it in the fall. We moved here 4 years ago, 2020.
Yeah.
But the rhubarb plant that was here when we moved in, the one little rhubarb plant they'd put in, we got some this past spring from that, and it was pretty good. Cameron ate a bunch of it with the, dip the stem in the sugar and bite it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We that was one thing we planted too a couple of years ago when we moved in was the rhubarb plant. And the first year it did not do well. The rhubarb plant was like, no, thank you. But then I replanted a different one the next year, and that one came back last year. And I'm hoping this year we'll get to harvest some stuff from it. So
Yep.
fingers crossed, because I love rhubarb.
I do too, and it's how I know spring is actually here when there's enough rhubarb to cut and put with strawberries and boil with sugar and make a compote and have it either on toast or on ice cream. That's when I know spring is officially for sure here.
Oh yeah, so lovely.
Yes, and we do it every spring. If I don't have rhubarb growing, I will buy rhubarb just to make it.
Yeah, it is. Yes, yes, and all the yeses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so my other question is, and I ask this almost of everybody, were you like, I don't know your upbringing. I should. We've been friends for like 2 years now. But were you brought up around farming or gardening or whatever?
So I grew up in the suburbs, so
Yeah.
directly no. Like our family didn't. We didn't even really have a garden, honestly. I'm trying to think back. I mean, we grew up truly in the suburbs. Around it was Ham Lake, so it was north suburbs, and it was kind of a development that was built around farmland, if you will. So I've always been farm adjacent.
Yeah.
And my grandparents on my dad's side were farmers, so we would go down to the farm, a few times a year, couple holidays, and then sometimes we'd go and stay with them for a week in the summer. So I did have exposure to farming from that. And then when I, started my container gardens and growing tomatoes, I got more and more interested in it. And so it was kind of always, I had a childhood dream to have a small farm at some point in my life. And then, life kind of does what it does, and, raised my child, and then, got married. Paul and I just celebrated our 8-year anniversary. And then we moved to our forever home, and that's really when it started to take place. We started to talk about it as we were, talking about getting married. It was like, where do you want to live? What does our life look like? And I had really started to get into understanding more about, where our food comes from, sustainable farming, and just really eating healthier and being healthier. And so that's really what drove it.
Okay, did Paul have any background in it beforehand?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
He is from England,
Yep.
the northeast of England, so kind of a harbor area. And he played professional soccer, so from the age of 16. So he was very much, playing and traveling and doing all the things, and then coaching. He had small gardens as well too, in his adult life, but no exposure to farming,
Okay.
as we know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna poke a little bit of fun at Paul just for a second. Paul would have been part of this interview, but Paul has the thickest British accent ever known to man. And when he's excited, he talks really fast and it's hard to understand him. So that's why he's not talking.
He's also working right now, but
That's
yes,
true.
he has an extreme. Yes, he does have a very thick British accent that he has kept for sure. And it's northeast, so it's not what people traditionally think of here in the U.S. When they think English accent. They think more south,
Yeah.
South England, so more London area. Um, the posh South, I would say.
Uh-huh.
But no, he is very, very Northern English accent for sure. Hmm.
Yes, when we were talking about this the other day, I told you he sounded like he had an English accent mixed with a Scottish brogue,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
his voice is fairly deep. So it's really easy to listen to him when he's talking slowly, but when
Yeah.
he's excited, he just runs all his words together. I'm like, what?
Yeah. And I mean, we would probably run over if I gave you the full story, but
Uh-huh.
we met when we were kids. I mean, I was 17 and he was 19, and then had separate lives, and then through, kismet, fate, whatever, reconnected probably about 10 years ago. And listening to him speak I've always just absolutely loved his accent, loved the, tenor of his voice. So anyways,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and he is a really nice man. And I think that his accent is really sexy, but that doesn't help me if I can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, you don't have to understand. You just have to listen.
Yes, and if I was in the market and he was single, I would probably listen closer. But since he's not single and neither am I, and I love you and I love my husband, I'm not playing that game. So,
Agreed and agreed. Love you and love my husband and love your husband.
yeah.
I mean, just really great people. It's always nice to connect with great people.
Yeah, and I was so thankful to find you because when we moved here, it was during COVID. You
Hmm.
guys, I don't think you guys were here in 2020. I think you moved to your place in 2021, right?
I think that is correct. Yeah. I'd have to
Yeah.
look back, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and having moved from small town Jordan, half an hour northeast of us,
Yeah.
in town, that quiet and not really seeing anybody was very welcome for the first year or so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then,
I listened to the episode about community, and it's so true. We have amazing neighbors, which is just super wonderful. And then also to have connected with you. I mean, I consider you a neighbor even though we're, 5-ish miles apart.
yeah,
That's how you are in the country, right? My neighbor Mary,
yep,
my vegetable farmer neighbors is when I do your full title.
yes, yes. My friend Kathy, who lives like 2 miles away, calls me CSA Mary because that's how she
Oh,
was
there you
introduced to
go.
me.
The full title, right?
Yep, yep. Because she has three Marys who are friends of hers. So she's like, I have CSA Mary, I have whatever Mary, I have the other Mary. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll take CSA Mary. That's fine.
That is awesome. And I think you call me my friend with goats, right?
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I was on Facebook and stumbled across your page, and I was like, O'Connor Family Acres, okay. And then I, scrolled through the page, and I was like, I need to meet this lady. I need to reach out and say hi, and I did, and here we are, 2 years later.
Yeah, I was so glad. It was really nice. It was nice to connect, and it's been nice because we're both, I think, learning in our journey, which is
Mhm.
awesome. So it's kind of like, oh, did this work for you? This worked for me. What are you guys up to today? What's new? And I know Paul and Kyle connect a lot and, talk about structures and farming and
Wood
how
burning
how's this going to work
furnaces, and
out?
yep.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it's really nice for Kyle to have someone to talk to who is male and gets into that stuff because he talks to me about the wood burning furnace and I'm like, as long as it throws heat, I'm good.
Exactly. Kind of like, why don't you give Kyle a call?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
Talk
wonderful.
talk shop with somebody who has the same parts as you do. It'll go better, I promise.
Exactly.
Yes. So anyway, a big mutual admiration society going on here. Sorry, listeners, but this is what happens when friends have a podcast episode recording. So I was looking at the description on your Facebook page, and it says Nubian/Kiko goats. So does that mean that they're a crossbreed?
Yes, we have some Nubian Saanens actually, and then we have a purebred Kiko. And so we have a little bit of both going on. Our buck had papers, but he passed this last summer. He was a purebred Nubian. And so his son is now our main breeder, and is Nubian. He'd be 3/4 Nubian and a quarter Saanen. I had to do the math there.
Yep.
It's not my strong point.
It's okay. So what's a Kiko goat?
Yeah, the Kiko are more meat goats. And honestly, looking at her, you probably wouldn't. I mean, she just kind of looks like the other goats. I think we had her when you were over last.
Yeah.
She's the all brown one with a little bit of black socks.
Yep.
And literally she looks just like the other goats, but she's more of a meat goat, where the Nubian and the Saanens are more of our dairy goats. But we bred her this year, so I'm super interested to see how she does, with the birthing, first of all, but then also what her offspring look like, and, do we get some decent milk from her? I'm interested to see all the things, which is kind of fun. That's the fun side of homesteading, is getting to kind of go, how does this work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Homesteaders are incredibly innovative. You're like, what would happen if we did this?
Absolutely. And we're certainly obviously not the first people to crossbreed Nubians and Kiko by any means. I think that's fairly common, because you kind of you're supposed to get the best of both worlds, right? So you get dairy and you get meat. And so it's kind of a good combo of goat. But our Kiko, Miss Mabel, was a little bit of a runt. And so I'm interested to see if her offspring are going to be full size. Will they give good milk? Which that we won't know for a few years yet. But it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to think it all through. And then Paul and I had conversations about, do we breed her? Do we not breed her? Because she was kind of a runt, but she's a good size runt, if that makes sense. She's not like 100. I wouldn't say she's 100%, but and from what I've read, because I do a lot of research online, sometimes they can have full size babies, and sometimes they produce other runts. So we'll see what happens.
Well, if you end up with a runt or two, maybe I can talk Kyle into letting us buy them from you.
Oh my gosh, that would be so fun. Yes.
I don't think I can, but I would love to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you guys got piglets back last spring, was it?
This spring, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was kind of the cool part. The goats, we were finally at a place where I'm like, okay, I think we can sell some of these goats. And we had been talking about getting turkeys and pigs were the next things we wanted to add to the homestead. And I was talking with a lady online about, I was talking to a guy about turkeys, and I was talking to a lady about pigs, and she wanted to trade some of the baby goats for the baby pigs. And so I was like, perfect. I love when we don't have to come out of pocket cash for buying new livestock.
Barter is fabulous. Yeah,
exactly. Barter is definitely the way to go. So we bartered some baby goats for some baby pigs, and we now have Magnalista pigs, 2 of them. One male that has been no parts. And then we have a female. And so the plan is to keep the female for breeding, and the male will be at some point processed.
Food. So, he'll be food.
Exactly.
Okay. So how old were they when you got them?
They were probably 6 to 8 months. I'd have to look back at the dates, but they were about 6 to 8 months, and the goats were about the same age. Basically at the age where you can, where they no longer need the mama.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
So they weren't little baby tiny piglets when you got them.
No, they weren't newborns by any means. Yeah, it was kind of funny because when I said we were bringing home pig, baby pigs, they're big. These are big pigs. They should
Mhm.
get up to upwards around 300-ish pounds. And I mean, that's not in the world of pigs. That's obviously not the biggest, but it's big for us on our little homestead. I'm like, oh, these guys are going to get huge.
Mhm.
And we went to pick them up and we saw the mamas and the daddies. I was like, oh goodness, these are going to be, yeah, these get big. But they are so sweet. Like I have just been with we have a grandkid who is 4 and he was just in with them the other day, petting them and, kind of checking them out. And, they're still at a size where he can do that. They're probably about the size of a lab right now, like a really gigantic chubby lab, but lab body size,
Mhm.
or height, I should say, maybe. Um, so he was still able to do that, which was kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah,
So the reason I asked how old they were when you got them is because it's really hard when it comes time to put down an animal for
it
food.
is.
And if you need me to come and stand with you or hug you when it's done, I can do that because I know you're
Oh,
probably going to be sad.
thank you, Mary. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely losing an animal, any animal, the ducks, the goats, it's not fun by any means for sure. But it's part of the circle of life. And, people always ask me if I'm getting, like an ostrich or something. And ostriches have their place, but, everything on our farm is maybe ostrich isn't a good example, like mini horses or something. And I'm like, everything on our farm has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
They're either guarding, uh, rodenting.
Yep.
The cats are little, de-rodenters. They produce food, or
Or they have a
the
job.
dogs are guarding. Yeah, everybody has a job or a purpose on
Mhm.
the homestead, and that's why we're feeding them. So, but thank you. I love that. It is hard to lose animals. It's especially hard when it's not planned, and it's predators or something else. That can be challenging and difficult, and frustrating because you feel like, you're setting everything up for success. And then, there's always mini setbacks, which are, just an opportunity to learn and change the way you're doing things. So we've definitely pivoted a few times on the farm.
Yeah, and it's hard even when you don't feel a particular connection to the animal.
Yeah.
We had 4 or 6, I can't remember, chickens at the old house
Mhm.
years ago, and it was time for them to no longer be part of our yard. And we were going to eat them. We were going to cull them and cook them, but they were not meat chickens, so they were not worth cooking. And we I made myself go out when they were dispatched. I made myself go out and watch the process because I was
Yeah.
like, if I'm expecting my husband and my sons to do this, I should probably at least be here for it. And I didn't cry, but man, that first chicken, I teared up.
Yeah.
And and I had that big thing in your chest where you feel like you're gonna really sob, but you don't.
Yeah.
And I don't even like chickens, Tracy.
I
They're not
know.
my favorite creature on earth. So
Yeah.
it's hard when you see something lose its life. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. No, I fully get it. The first few ducks that we dispatch are always a struggle, and then you kind of get in the swing of it. But it is emotional, and it's really hard when it's not planned, and
Yeah.
you are, I think, to your point, even when there's not a connection, that those animals are in your care and you're responsible for those animals. Kind of like we talk about barn cats a lot, right?
Yeah.
Even though we know that the success rate of a barn cat is probably not as high as some other animals, um, you still are sad when something happens because they're in your care. So yeah, it's interesting, but the joy of baby kittens and baby goats and baby ducklings
Uh-huh.
and hopefully one day baby piglets, it'll be a few years, but I'm kind of excited for that too. Well, it definitely overshadows um
The
the
sad.
trials and tribulations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like living in Minnesota. We live it, we suffer the winters to enjoy the spring, summer, and fall. I think it's the same kind of perspective.
100%, yes. Yeah. Well, and there are people who absolutely love the wintertime in Minnesota for sure. But I am on your uh, perspective there with I tolerate the winter because spring, summer, and fall are great. Although Paul got me a pair of snowshoes 2 years
Hmm.
ago, which was kind of not perfect timing because last year we had no snow, and this
Yeah.
year we're struggling a bit. So yeah, still waiting to get those snowshoes out there.
Hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Uh,
So we're at 30 minutes, but I wanted to share a thing that I did yesterday for
yeah,
listeners. I made a designated website for the podcast yesterday.
I love that. I'm so excited. Congratulations. I'm gonna have to go check it out.
Yeah, it's a tinyhomesteadpodcast.com. Very original. But I'm going to be doing blog posts about every episode, and that way people can get a little bit more background on the people, and if there's stuff that gets mentioned, like the Kiko goats, I can do a little aside in the blog
Yeah.
post about what a Kiko goat is or whatever. So it just gives me a little leeway to play and to get back into writing a little bit. So if you guys want to check it out, it's a tinyhomesteadpodcast.com, and it's got the whole list of episodes on the episode page. Like, it's all there, so you can just click and listen.
Awesome. I'm so excited to go check it out. Thank you, Mary, for
It,
sharing.
it's super cool. The particular website platform that I found is so user friendly.
Oh,
I think it's
nice.
I think it's Webador is the name of it, and I opened it up and looked at it and went, "Oh my God, this is easier than any other one I've ever used." I'm so excited to dig into this.
Nice. I'll have to check it out because we do have I did a little of that with Paul's coaching to set up a website because he's an independent contractor. And the one we used was also very user friendly, but had some limitations. And so I'll definitely check out the Webador. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before. I think it's actually Weebly, Weebly, but it's Webador is the thing that shows up when you actually sign up for it.
Okay.
Um, but I'm very much in love with the way it worked, and it only took me like an hour to get it set up.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's awesome.
Yep, and I'm going to be screwing around with Instagram in over the next week to start promoting the podcast on Instagram because I'm bad at Instagram. I don't quite understand how to use it, but my daughter loves it. So I'm gonna hit her up for a couple hours this week and be like, "Can you show me how to do this?"
Yeah, I wish I could help you with that one, but I too am bad on the Insta. And I know it's extremely popular and I know it's really good for your business. And I need to I need to get into it both for my jobby job and for my
Hmm.
farm life. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how people do all the fun things I see, and I'm like, how did they do that? I don't even know where to find how to do that. So
Yeah.
my daughter does all kinds of stuff with Instagram, so I'm just
Good.
going to be like, "Hey, Sandra, I need your help. Can you help your old mommy with some new technology?"
Kids are the best. And once she shares with you, then I'll
I'll
pick
share with
your
you.
brain.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know there's a way to kind of tie some platforms together. So when you post on one, it posts on
Yep.
multiple, which is really nice. So,
It's
yeah.
helpful. It sure
Yeah.
is. All right, Tracy, I want to talk to you again this fall after this summer. And
Yeah.
and oh yeah, we're going to be making the duck that you gave us next weekend. We're going to still
Good, good. Oh, good. I hope you love it. It should be good. Let me know. Keep me posted, and I would love to talk to you again, and we can update how our respective gardening season was.
Yes, and we can talk about the dispatching. No, you're not going to be dispatching the pigs for a while.
The mail will be this coming fall. So
Yeah.
yeah, if we talk again in the fall, It's about 18 months, and
Mhm.
so we would have had him about 18 months. So, well, I'll give you an update on whether that has happened or not happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
'cause I think that would be really good for people to learn about because it's a
Yeah,
process. So,
for
all right.
sure.
Thank you so much for your time, Tracy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mary. It was great to talk
Have
to you.
have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.